How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. We've got a lot to get into on the show here today. Dave Meltzer is going to join us in the second segment of the show. Also, we'll be taking a lot of phone calls, emails, and text messages because while there is news, really the biggest news is the same news. WWE's doing horribly. The SmackDown show, 1.833 million viewers. The lowest number for the show since the 2016 brand split and its move to a live airing on Tuesday nights. Show has never done this number on Tuesdays. Show did this number on Fridays, but a very, very bad number. Show was down at 12% from last week alone, 25% from the same week in 2018, followed a night in which Raw was down almost 30% year to year. And SmackDown did retain the usual 85% of Raw's audience. So, not a great number. For those of you that heard the show yesterday, when Impact went head-to-head with Raw in 2010, a terrible idea, and they got massacred by Raw. Raw did something like 5.5 million viewers that night, and Thunder, same story. Not even Thunder, Impact, for crying out loud. Impact did more viewers that night when they got smashed by Raw than SmackDown did on Tuesday night this week. And on top of that, when we used to talk about the ratings for Impact and how they were always the same, 1.1 rating, 1.5 million viewers. No matter what they did, 1.1 rating, 1.5 million viewers. That's practically where SmackDown is at right now. And it does appear that as the NBA playoffs continue on, it is very, very likely that this number is going to drop even lower than 1.833 million viewers. So, yes, the reason I said Thunder, the reason I said Nitro is this company is WCW in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. Not every way. They're not going out of business. I have watched some Nitros in the year 2000 or worse, but this is shocking. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back on the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. So, story of the show today is a story it's been for a while now. This WWE, it's just fallen off a cliff in a lot of different ways. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about the ratings. The Raw number was terrible. The third hour fell below 2 million viewers. SmackDown rating, terrible, 1.833 million viewers. NBA playoffs are still ongoing, and as they continue to be ongoing, this number is probably going to drop even lower. They're supposed to go to Fox in October and do great numbers, and I don't know, 1.833 million. Football season's going to decimate Raw. And on top of all of that, WWE has announced the date of NXT's next TakeOver special, but they don't even have a location yet. Now, the next TakeOver special isn't, say, in August with SummerSlam or whatever. It's June. It's June 1st. It's less than 4 weeks away, and they don't have a location for this TakeOver event. And apparently they're going to announce the TakeOver location on Triple H's social media this coming Monday afternoon. That's the plan. So I guess we'll wait and see if they actually do that, but Kathy Kelly announced the next TakeOver is going to take place Saturday, June 1st. No other information, no ticket information, no location, etc. The event center at San Jose State University in San Jose, California, originally supposed to host TakeOver June 8th, but there were changes to WWE's schedule when their next show in Saudi Arabia was moved from May to June. WWE officially confirmed yesterday they will be returning to Saudi Arabia for a show at the King Abdullah Sports City Stadium Friday, June 7th. NXT taped television at Full Sail University tonight and a build to next month's TakeOver. So they did a television taping, and at no point during that television taping could they actually say where the TakeOver is going to be in 3.5 weeks because they don't have a location yet. So it reminds me of World Championship Wrestling when there was an ad, I believe it was in USA Today, but it's this big ad for the upcoming WCW pay-per-view, and it said something to the effect of, this card is so amazing that even WCW doesn't know what it is. The fact of the matter was, they had no idea what the card was, but they still bought an ad in USA Today to promote a pay-per-view where they had no card. that's what's going on here. I'm astounded, but it continues on.
It was an amazing reminder that, they would actually have copy that somebody would have to come up with that had nothing to do with wrestling and didn't care about wrestling. So they would essentially make fun of the product in the ad that they were pushing the product with. WCW was an interesting time. WWE is an interesting time whenever the Saudis can wave their finger and magically make one of your other shows disappear because they want you to come on a different date. I guess it's worth the millions of dollars that they're going to get. It's going to look very pretty on their next earnings report, that $60 million or whatever it is. It's going to be dropped in that other category, which is why they're going. So I don't know. Maybe the show ends up at Full Sail. I have no idea what takes place. I don't know what their schedule is like at that time. I remember you and Dave, bandying about schedules back and forth, but not a good way to do business, I wouldn't think. And I guess you always have Full Sail. You can always call on a very rabid crowd to come on short notice, and they'd show up there and probably have a great time and make a great atmosphere. But really a horrible idea, because you really did hurt this show. And the walk-up for it and all that sort of stuff, how to promote it and all that sort of good stuff, because, well, it doesn't matter. You're making so many millions off the other Saudi shows. So, yeah, interesting about that whole thing kind of going down in the shadow of what took place and some of the outrage and pushback over Saudi Arabia this week. Bill Goldberg making the decision to go it's an interesting one, but money talks.
So Mike here, I presume this is a troll, but maybe not, because it starts with bro. It says, WWE is just fine. Ratings hardly matter in 2019. People watch on YouTube TV, PS View, Hulu, and pirate shows. Yeah, well, listen, my friend Mike, you moron. The YouTube TV and the PlayStation View and the Hulu, all of those numbers actually play into the ratings we're talking about here. So the show did not do 1.8 million viewers because people are switching to Hulu. The show did 1.8 million viewers because people are switching off WWE and they're not watching it anymore. And if you think the ratings don't matter in 2019, you're an even bigger moron, because the entire reason that they got a huge television deal was because their ratings just happened to be up year over year during the negotiation period, and their ratings are now down year over year. And I guarantee you, this has been the talk of the television industry these last couple of weeks. And the fact of the matter is, if they were doing these numbers during negotiation period, they would not have gotten this deal. And we'll see what happens in 3 years when they need to get another television deal. So don't be an idiot. That's my life advice for you. Don't be an idiot. Use your brain. It was given to you for a reason. This person here notes the numbers for Raw and SmackDown, the company is doing worse right now in terms of viewership than the second run in World Championship Wrestling of Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff. Those shows were drawing more viewers than Raw and SmackDown are drawing today. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Now,
yeah, I lived through it.
To be fair, the WCW shows were worse, okay? They were much worse.
Yeah, they also had a lot higher place to fall from, and we're way past that at this point. I mean, I understand those comparisons because they're tangible, and they came at another time when ratings were important, but I think to always compare those times, I mean, why? It's where you're coming from at that point. It's crazy. I mean, you need to forget about numbers from 25 years ago. You need to look at numbers from the last couple of years, and that's what matters.
Let's go to the phones. You're on the air. What's going on?
Hey, guys. This is Eric from Cincinnati. How are you?
What's up?
Hey, just a quick question for you. Two of my favorite acts going in NXT right now are easily Johnny Gargano and the Undisputed Era. I'm kind of curious as to possibly why they haven't been called up yet. Do you think that could be some maybe backstage politicking from Triple H because he knows Vince McMahon could possibly mess up the act?
No. There's no backstage politicking by Triple H. I mean, if there was backstage politicking by Triple H, Gargano and Ciampa would have been called up as a tag team. So no, that's not happening. It's just, Vince calls up who he wants to call up, and some people are unlucky to get called up, quite frankly. I mean, they're lucky in their pocketbook, but, I mean, as far as, being used correctly, I mean, virtually everybody that gets called up was doing much better off in NXT. But no, there's no backstage politicking by Triple H.
Okay, thanks for the call, guys.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, you think that maybe Triple H would want it, but I mean, he's just not gonna. It's just not gonna happen. I mean, Vince is in charge, everybody. Vince McMahon is in charge. And what he wants to do is what he's going to do. And that is it. Back in a moment. Or, I'm sorry, to the phones. You're on the air. What's up?
Hey, Bryan, it's Tony from Philadelphia. What's going on?
Yes, Tony.
Hey, so last time we talked, I talked about the draft and, how poor it was. And if anybody knows how to do a draft, it's Stardom. If you should watch their draft, but I digress. But speaking of Stardom, real quick before I get to my point, Kairi Sane, if Vince does anything to her, if he changes her or ruins her in any way, I am completely done because he
changed her music
and too cute. Yeah, but I'm talking about the character. They've already ruined Bayley, but if they do anything to her, I mean, she is the most adorable thing in the world. I think we can both agree on that, besides your daughter, as you've said in the past.
Yeah, that means nothing to Vince.
But it does not, and that's what sucks. But I wanted to talk about Daniel Bryan and the injury that he currently has. I've been reading a lot of reports as being talked about that his injury is, quote-unquote, closely guarded.
Well, no, he's back Tuesday. He's been cleared.
Tuesday. Is he wrestling on Tuesday?
I don't know, but he's cleared, so they can have him wrestle Tuesday, or they can have him not wrestle Tuesday. So I don't know what they're going to do, but he's back and good to go.
But they've never said what the injury was, correct?
No.
If it is a head injury, though, I know he's cleared, but how much is too much for Daniel Bryan? Because they've changed the plans. I don't know how accurate it is. But apparently he was supposed to continue his feud with Kofi Kingston,
yes.
And they pushed Kevin Owens' heel turn ahead.
Yes. So what you know what that tells you, my friend? You know what that tells you? Since we have to go to a break right here? That tells me there was probably a head injury. I don't know for sure, but I know that for some reason, whenever someone suffers any other injury, like Jeff Hardy's knee or Rey Mysterio, whatever he had that one time, but the point of it is, like, they'll tell you what the injury is. But they don't tell you what the injury is when it's a head injury. And the fact that they switched Kevin Owens means that they probably didn't know if he'd be back soon, which also suggests probably a head injury. But he's cleared now. We can talk about this back in a moment. Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Dave Meltzer joining us here today. So, caller was just talking about Daniel Bryan, Dave. And we don't know why Daniel Bryan was out of action. He's now apparently returning on Tuesday. We don't know, so this is speculation, but it seems to me that all evidence points towards some sort of head injury because he was out of action for 3 weeks, and they didn't tell us what the issue was, and they had Kevin Owens turn heel to replace him in the Kofi Kingston feud for the time being, which means to me that they didn't know how short or long he would be out, and if he had a problem with his knee or his arm or his shoulder or whatever, I mean, you go to the doctor and you find out what the doctor says, and then you can do a report. So, I mean, other wrestlers, Jeff Hardy injured his knee. They told us what the problem was, and there was just silence around Daniel Bryan. So that, to me, the evidence suggests it probably was something to do with his head.
I would say that's a very reasonable deduction. It's certainly what I don't know. It's certainly what I would speculate on. I don't want to speculate on somebody's injury when the injury report says, I forgot the word. It was like a really vague word, like undetermined or something. It was clearly
undetermined.
Like, there's actually a word. I don't remember it off the top of my head that was on the injury report. It was like, but it was a word that basically didn't say what it was. So they were keeping it from, even the people internally. So it's something that they wanted to keep under wraps, and they never do that. I mean, that's why when somebody gets hurt, generally we find out what it is. But yeah, I mean, it was all things would certainly direct you to that one, and if that's correct, the next part of the question is that what does that mean? It becomes a very interesting issue. So yeah, I mean, there's a reason that we don't know. It's not like we don't have sources. There's a reason we don't know because they don't want anyone to know this one, and it's not usually on injuries, it's like straightforward. It's like, okay, this is the injury. This is how long. Sometimes they'll lie on television because they want, like with Braun Strowman, make you think it's a worse injury. So when he comes back in 8 weeks instead of 6 months, it's like he's a monster, But even then, we know they're lying on TV. So Jeff Hardy, they weren't lying on TV. Jeff Hardy, that's the legit deal.
Full reconstructive knee surgery.
Reconstructive knee surgery on the right knee, yeah. So
holy smokes!
Probably, 7 to 9 months, probably.
So this could conceivably be largely the end of the Hardys.
7 to 9 months it will be. They'll probably be brought back again. I think you never know, and I mean you can't predict Vince in 7 to 9 months on anything.
I can't predict Vince on Monday.
What?
I can't predict him on Monday.
You can't. No, nothing.
I don't even know if I can predict him from the previous Tuesday.
No, nothing makes sense anymore. So it's kind of hard to really pay attention or care because it's not gonna. They're gonna change their mind, and it's not gonna make sense, and it's it ruins the. A lot of the following of pro wrestling, unfortunately, but that's just the situation right now that we're in.
So the cover story in the New Observer this week, up and running at WrestlingObserver.com, is largely talking about the WWE financials. And now, before the report came out, there seemed to be this feeling that, things aren't going to be great, but don't worry, there's TV money coming, and it's nothing to worry about, and instead, the stock price indicated that, in fact, there are analysts worried about this, even though there is a lot of big money coming.
Now the feeling is that the stock's too low again because it artificially dropped too fast. But I mean, it's hard to say. There are companies that are far more lucrative that have a far less dollar valuation than WWE. But I mean, there's I guess more uncertainty in those companies, and with WWE, the feeling is there's a lot of certainty because so much of their money is fixed and guaranteed, and they're looking at where they're going to be in 2020 and 2021, and it looks real good. But everyone is assuming that the audience is going to siphon downward, and I'm not assuming that at all.
So the television deals kick in 2019. I guess when is the next negotiating period? When do they need to be?
It would end in the deal would end in October 2024. So I guess that if we talk the negotiating period, we're talking about 2023. So that's a year that they need to do very well. Or I'm not. Who knows what the situation is going to be with content in 2023? Nobody does, but that's the year that the business level will whatever. Like if WWE was contract was up next year and they were negotiating with this year's numbers, they would not get anywhere close to. I wouldn't say anywhere close, but they wouldn't get close to what they got. They negotiated, and they had a good year that they negotiated. UFC had a bad year that they negotiated. If UFC negotiated a year earlier, they'd be swimming in money, even more than they are. So it's very important for WWE to have a good 2023 if that's what you're looking at. Yeah,
and it's very important for AEW to sign a deal like ASAP, like yesterday.
Yeah, I would say that. They wouldn't say that, but I would say that. Yeah.
Why would they not say that?
Because all's good. But I think they're very close. But yeah, I would want it signed this week for sure. I would have wanted it signed last week, but because the TV industry, believe me, the TV industry is looking at the WWE numbers, and it's like record low Monday, record low Tuesday, and the vision of or the perception of wrestling right now is not a positive one.
It is not just record low Monday, record low Tuesday. It's not like everything's been fine and then there were like two aberrations. We're talking. This is a
two aberrations. I would just say, hey, it's a bad week. It's not a bad week. And the other thing is like we talked last night. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse over the next month. If you think that this is the bottom, this is not the bottom. The bottom will be early June, but then even when they get it early June, they're going to go below that in the fall anyway. So we're not even close to the bottom.
So what's AEW's big selling point then if this thing is not signed then and there's concern inside the industry and you have ROH who was responsible for their production last time and they're trying to sell people on what they can bring to the table. What can they bring to the table?
It's a Keith Mitchell show, so I'm not too worried about that. Keith Mitchell's been doing this dating back to World Class in the early 80s. So that's not, to me, maybe we'll find out, but I don't think that that's necessarily an issue. But, yeah.
Well, if you're AEW, how do you stop any bleeding or any cynicism that you might get, naturally responsive back?
What can you do? You can just put on shows, and there's nothing there's nothing AEW can do that will help WWE's ratings. So if the perception of the industry is WWE, AEW is powerless to do anything until, they can have a really good show on May 25th, which will help momentum and hopefully break them away from the stigma of WWE declining. And, what happens is, really the game starts in October or whenever, whenever they get television, whenever their television starts, that's when the game starts. And it's not like first week rating, because that doesn't mean anything. If it's a bad rating or a good rating on the first week, it means, I don't want to say it means nothing, it means something for sure. But it's really where you are in the spring of 2020, where when you've really settled in and we kind of know, are you going up or are you going down? That's when all, the real evaluations come in spring of 2020 for AEW, in my mind.
Dave, I know you talked a lot about the Kevin Von Erich Weissland documentary last night already, but one thing that actually stuck out was something that I don't know if this is an inaccuracy or not, or if this is a correction, but I was always under the impression when Kerry hurt his foot, he came back too early and he actually made it worse, which led to an even worse amputation, or actually led to the amputation.
I believe that your story is correct.
Okay, so was that just something I guess they got kind of glossed over?
Again. What?
So that was just something they kind of got glossed over there in the midst of everything?
Yeah. That's how I understand it, is that he got hurt, and he came back way too fast with him in the match with Bryan and Diaz, and then got hurt again, and that was one of the things that led to the foot having to be amputated. Like, it wasn't amputated right away, yeah.
And just out of curiosity, were you surprised, even though it does fit and shows a lot about Kevin's disappointment, but are you surprised that they actually noted the Ricky Lance Von Erich thing as much as they did?
Yeah, I was surprised they went as heavy as they did with it. And the one thing that was new to me is I didn't realize that Kevin and Kerry hated it so much. I mean, we all did, but I didn't realize, like, within the family that the kids hated it as well. It was I don't think that it was as much of a killer to the company as it was portrayed. I think that was going to happen either way when the perception of the Von Erichs changed with all the deaths. But it was still a negative. But it was when Fritz did that interview and said he's not a Von Erich, his name is William Vaughn, and we own the name Von Erich and all that. That was one of the stupidest things that I've ever seen on television, because you basically, for a year plus, however long that they used him, he was the cousin, and they kept saying it, and then all of a sudden he says, oh, he's not a member of our family, and this and that, and it's like, you basically said that you've been lying to your fans, and you're the baby faces, and lying in a big way. This is not like some small minor thing, and it definitely was a, point where the fans could no longer trust them, and that's never a good thing.
Well, we have to do a break here, but, my guess might be that when they were talking to Kevin about everything, they basically asked him his thoughts, and maybe he felt that the Lance Von Erich deal was a significantly bigger deal than everyone else did, and that's why they played it up so big in the documentary. So we have to do a break. We'll talk more about this later on. Thanks, Dave. Back in a moment. Observer Live. Back on the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. This person here says, what do you guys think WWE should change aside from Vince McMahon to improve the ratings? Well, we sort of talked about this at the end of the show yesterday. Nothing's turning around these ratings anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. But the first thing that needs to be done is Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn need to go work on the XFL. They need to get out. Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn. They need to go work on the XFL. And the XFL needs to be a giant success that lasts years and years. And they need to stay over there working on that. And then whoever, whether it be Triple H or whoever it might be, somebody needs to come in and they need to promote professional wrestling again. That's it. They have so much money behind them. They have great television deals for the next several years. Someone just needs to go in there and promote professional wrestling. Professional wrestling has been a success in this country, on and off, since the 1870s. And every time that somebody has tried to promote something other than professional wrestling, it always takes a hit. And that's what's going on right now. WWE is not promoting professional wrestling. I don't know what they're promoting. I honestly don't even know what it is anymore. Like, you can't say wrestling, you can't say wrestlers. Like, they don't want anyone to get over past a certain level.
It's an athletic Muppet show.
I don't even know what it is, but it's not pro wrestling. And you watch, obviously NXT is a little bit different. It's very different, okay? But I mean, wrestling fans who watch NXT, they love it. They absolutely love it. And they don't complain about it the way that everybody complains about the WWE main roster. Why? Because NXT is promoting professional wrestling, okay? They've had NXT TakeOver shows that have outdrawn the Raw and SmackDown show on a pay-per-view weekend. So I realize that they go on the road and they do their little shows, and the shows don't do very well, and they draw 600 people or whatever. I mean, you're just running small shows in a loop around Florida. I mean, when they run a large building, when they sell tickets to a large building in a city where Raw and SmackDown are also going to be running that building, they have outdrawn Raw and SmackDown. Raw, which is on the USA Network, SmackDown, which is on the USA Network, NXT is on the WWE Network, okay? So they promote a product where the fans of NXT are willing to pay big ticket prices to go and watch takeover events because it's professional wrestling, okay? You can say whatever you want to say about AEW and Double or Nothing or whatever, but do you want to know what All In was? It was a professional wrestling show. And they did things a little bit differently. They built it up a lot on YouTube, and obviously they didn't have a television deal or anything like that, and they had help from Ring of Honor and New Japan. But at the end of the day, it was a professional wrestling show, and it sold out. A professional wrestling show. I mean, that's what professional wrestling fans want to watch. You can look at UFC in 2006. UFC was real. It wasn't even fake, okay? But what UFC did in 2006 was they basically did pro wrestling. They promoted different fighters, and they let you into who they were as far as personalities. They did television shows and those, what they used to call those things. They didn't the UFC. They were the 1 hour specials leading up to the shows. Anyway. Ultimate Fighter was a pro wrestling television show. It was a bunch of crazy people that ended up not liking each other, and they built up rivalries, and they paid them off on pay-per-view. They promoted like a professional wrestling promotion. They had fighters and belts and matches and pay-per-view events, and it was huge because this is not rocket science. I know people want to think it's rocket science. I know people want to think, well, if WWE could hire writers from Deadwood or whatever and make it more like an HBO drama. I mean, stop for a second. If they just promoted pro wrestling, it would be fine. People, human beings, if you're at the mall today, okay? If you're at the food court and some dude orders the chicken teriyaki, and the guy in front of him takes it, and the guy behind him gets mad, and they get in a fight, like everybody in the whole mall is going to stop what they're doing, and they're going to watch these two people fighting over chicken teriyaki. Okay? This is something that from the dawn of time, like if you're a religious fella, Cain and Abel got in a big fight. They were like the second and third person on this planet in storyline. They got in a fight. And to the end of time, people are going to want to see two people that they know something about get in a fight. That's it. And if you can promote that as professional wrestling, if you can explain to people, well, this is what this guy thinks, and this is what this guy thinks, and these people don't like each other, and they're battling, dude, it's pro wrestling, it's politics, it's life. Everybody's going to want to watch this until the end of time. It's very difficult to screw this up. Somehow WWE is doing it. I don't even know how. This is like the simplest thing in the world. They can't even do it right. So, yes, get rid of Vince, get rid of Kevin Dunn, and bring somebody in that's going to promote pro wrestling, and everything's going to be fine. That's it.
I don't know why you're so dead set on throwing Kevin Dunn on the XFL. There are plenty of people in sports that know how to produce football where you don't need Kevin Dunn.
I don't need him. I'm just saying get rid of him. He can go do headstands on a mountain for all I care.
Well, get out. Yeah, fine.
That's
That's okay.
I'm not going to watch the XFL
either. No, I know you're not.
I don't care what he does.
I like pro wrestling, so silly me. And it's again, you already said it all, but they have wanted to pull away from what they are so bad. And as you mentioned, as we've seen with the Greeks not long ago, professional wrestling isn't that hard. Promoting two people having a conflict isn't that hard. It's either because they want to achieve something sporting and achieve some sort of accolade, a championship maybe, because they're sportsmen and competitors, or they have a personal issue that they want to solve by doing damage to each other. It's the same thing for people who are half naked, who want to get it on a canvas mat, whether it be boxing or kickboxing or wrestling or any sort of art that way. And pro wrestling is just the same exact way. And the more they try to deviate from it, the more they try to get away from it, the more they want to be the variety show and completely forget about what got them there in the first place, the worse you're going to have it, because you're not making as many sports entertainment fans as history has made pro wrestling fans.
As far as it is, when's the last time WWE promoted pro wrestling? It's not that long ago. Like, they
did it with Goldberg and Lesnar.
Dude,
they've done it a zillion times.
You guys didn't like Roman Reigns, okay? But they did pro wrestling with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. You just didn't want to accept Roman Reigns. They did plenty of pro wrestling over the last several years. Since the fall, they've stopped doing pro wrestling. There's zero storyline consistency. There are no storylines.
But that's it.
There's no storylines.
You can't believe in it, and that's the biggest problem. Is they occasionally will do it, and then if it doesn't work right away or something like that, they'll go, see, people don't want to see that. Look at ratings. Look at this. Look at that, and they always ignore what really has caused the atrophy to hurt those things.
Let me explain something to everybody, because Lance has brought this up before. He points out that, like, let me think of an example. So, well, anyway, his point is that everybody uses the word angle wrong. An angle is not a storyline. An angle is a change of direction in a storyline. So, for example, when Kevin Owens joined the New Day, the angle was when he turned on the New Day. The angle wasn't the full storyline of Kevin Owens and the New Day, okay? So, the point of all of this is, in order to have an angle, you must have a storyline. Does that make sense? Like, in order to have a right turn on a road, you got to have a road first, right?
Yeah, you got to be driving down the road, yes.
So, there are no storylines in WWE. There is zero consistency right now. So, therefore, if you have zero consistency, you can't have any angles. Like, I guess you did have one with Kevin Owens turning on Kofi Kingston after 2 weeks. But how can you have compelling angles if you can't book a storyline that goes longer than 2 weeks without everything changing, without things being dropped? You guys remember Mojo Rawley in the Mirror? Yeah, of course you don't, because they just dropped it out of thin air like they've done 1,000 things. WWE today is a series of things that happen. You watch the show, there are a series of things that happen. And then you watch the show the next week, and there are a series of... Did they have anything to do with the week prior? Probably not. I mean, somebody gave me a list of the Money in the Bank competitors, and it's like 80% of them are in Money in the Bank coming off losses on television. Like, they lost matches, and then they were just randomly announced for Money in the Bank. There were no qualifying matches. They just said, these are the people that are in Money in the Bank. 80% of them have been losers. Like, that's what WWE is right now. That's not pro wrestling. I don't know what it is. Okay? But there was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, where they would build up a storyline, and it would play out for a couple of months, and then they'd pay it off. And maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't. But there was a time fairly recently when they did that. They don't do that anymore. Since October, November, I don't know what happened, but it's just stopped. And so they're no longer doing pro wrestling.
They haven't been doing it for quite some time. They didn't just stop. They've been bitches about this for a long time now.
Well, people complain about different things, but I mean, there have always been storylines. There aren't even storylines anymore.
Well,
name a storyline that's going on right now.
Baron Corbin?
What's the storyline? That he's killing ratings?
He exists, yes.
Like, what's the storyline? Name it. Everybody, name a storyline right now. I mean, the best I can come up with off the top of my head is that
Roman
Kevin Owens
Shane
turned on Kofi Kingston after joining the New Day for 2 weeks.
Well, you have that. You have Roman against the fighting the McMahons now with
That's
Shane,
a storyline? No, it's just a bunch of stuff that happens every week. I'm talking a story.
Well.
Like, you're going to write a book, and like, all right, I'm going to write a book. It's called Roman Reigns versus the Authority. Okay, what have we got so far? Chapter 1, he went to SmackDown. Chapter 2, he feuded with the B team. That's not a story.
Well, he punched Vince. You're missing part of the story.
Oh, I'm sorry. He punched Vince, and now he's facing the B team. This is a bad story, okay?
So you want to leave Shane out of this story. You forget the chapter with Shane now.
What was the chapter with Shane?
Drawing the ire of the sun. Drawing the ire of the sun, and the sun using Elias and now using people to
Why is he using Elias?
Him.
What does Elias have to do with anything?
Because he already had an existing situation with Elias.
So a series of things are happening, and we're pretending it's a story. It's not a story. This is not a story, everybody.
It's not a wrestling company, unfortunately, and
God,
seeing that.
Even the Kofi thing, like, so let me get this straight.
Pancakes.
Kofi won the title, and then Kevin Owens went to SmackDown and decided that he wanted to be in the New Day, so they let him be in the New Day, and then he beat them up. That's a story? That ain't even a story.
No, but the thing is, there's a story there, but it's how they tell it and everything, too, of the fact that, like, and we're going to see how it plays out. They've pushed it too fast, but, like, Kevin Owens should be pissed. It was his opportunity that was lost. It was his kid he was hanging out with at the theater, and it's Kofi's kid that gets to celebrate with him in the middle of WrestleMania's ring at that great moment that Kevin doesn't have.
Why is that Kofi's fault?
Because
How did Kofi take his WrestleMania moment?
Kevin Owens is a heel, so he's justifying that in his mind, and he's looking at Kofi as, I was supposed to be here. This was supposed to be mine. Now I have to stand back and clap. You're throwing pancakes like an idiot, which I wish somebody would actually tell him.
Okay, so you told me that story. They didn't tell me that story.
I know.
So again, they don't have a story. This thing is a mess. Back in a moment, Wrestling Observer Live. This person here says, what's the projected time slot for the XFL? Seemingly they wouldn't want to run shows on Sundays, Mondays, or Fridays to challenge WWE. Dude, XFL doesn't even have a time slot. They don't even have a TV deal yet. Like, I presume they're going to get a TV deal. I presume they'll, I don't know where, but, I mean, man. Vince McMahon is the alleged wrestling genius, and his wrestling show's at an all-time low, and he wants a TV deal for a football league that crashed and burned the first time. I mean, this may not be quite as easy as they're thinking it's going to be.
Yeah, well, look, at the Alliance of American Football got a lot more than anyone thought they could, and they were completely built on a house of cards. At least they don't know there's money here. And the fact of the matter is, there's so many sports stations at this point, as long as they're not concerned about a certain dollar value, they're going to get something from somebody, but I would look for the XFL to be taking place on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, maybe a game like on a Friday or something like that, but most certainly on the weekend.
Well, you know, Vince wants to make the game shorter. Because God knows who wants to sit around and watch TV, watch so much football. Yeah, that's a big deal. He wants to make the game shorter.
Yeah.
So he can run his game on a Sunday afternoon at, 1 o'clock, and it'll be over by the time the WWE pay-per-view starts. It can help promote the WWE pay-per-view.
You know what's amazing? Know what the time slot is for the average football game? 3 hours. He wants to make that shorter. He thinks people are sitting around way too long watching way too much.
Yes, he thinks the game should be closer to 2 hours.
How about that, huh?
It's incredible. It's one of my favorite stories of the return of the XFL. Vince thinks the games are too long. He wants to make a football game shorter. We're out of time, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with more. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. Thanks, Mike, as always. Callers and listeners, everybody in the studio. We'll talk to you again next time. Wrestling Observer Live.